Hey everyone, Ross Marchand here, Director of Policy for the Taxpayers Protection Alliance. And I repeat, a lot has changed during this pandemic. But one thing that more or less remains constant is the constant hum of mail trucks coming to and from and still delivering to each and every door. And here today with me to talk about postal issues is none other than Reason Foundation's very own Jen Sidorova. Jen, thanks for coming on to talk with me today.
Good to be here.
I have a lot of questions about USPS because we've been hearing a lot about a potential postal bailout and how bad their finances were both before and during this pandemic. So, what is going on at the Postal Service, and specifically, what is happening in terms of their pension situation?
Right. The way the USPS pensions are organized, they are pre-funded. They are a defined benefit pension plan, and they also have the healthcare portion of it that's also guaranteed. And there are a lot of pensions like that across the country, and a lot of them are going to be in trouble over this pandemic because a lot of them were underfunded. So with USPS in particular, though, the pension part of their benefit is 87% funded, which brings it kind of even above the average of 73% funded. It means that 87 means that on every dollar that they owe, they have about 87 cents. And that's still not so good because it's obviously underfunded. They don't have enough. But where the real kind of conversation and the questions come into when it comes to USPS retirement benefits is with the healthcare portion, because healthcare portion is only 44% funded. If you think of it, they don't even have half of what they owe on their healthcare benefits. And then that's kind of the conversation with the healthcare is a long one, because there were two major bills that were brewing in the Senate back last year, and one of them passed on to the passed the House and is now into the Senate, and the other one is still in the committee. And they both have to deal with, fixing the USPS. I can go into further details about that, but the truth of the matter is that the healthcare portion is the one that they're struggling with. And coming into this pandemic after a bull market where you're supposed to get all the returns in the world and building up this cushion for you to be spending in this times of crisis, that's what was supposed to happen. But we don't see it, unfortunately, because the USPS pensions and healthcare benefits weren't ready for this and weren't making the necessary steps, as didn't do the other pensions across the country.
Right, and we hear a lot about this claim. This claim just keeps getting mentioned over and over and over again during this debate. And we hear that, unlike any other federal agency, USPS has to, quote unquote, pre-fund their healthcare retirement obligations 75 years out. Is that true at all? Is there a kernel of truth to that?
So yeah, that's a very good question. I'm happy to talk about it because um, what is this pre-funding situation? What does it mean for a pension to be pre-funded or for a healthcare benefit to be pre-funded? What it means is that they put enough money into the system while the employees are still working, and then it gets into the pool of money that's invested. And then over the course of the employee's career, these contributions together with investment kind of build out this pool of money that's later on paid off to the person when they retire. And nationally, these investment returns that you can only get when you pre-fund the system, these investment returns make up to 62% of all the pension checks. So that's more than half. And so what's going to happen if you don't do that? That means this is that much money that you're missing on. And pre-funding every system, well, I shouldn't say every, but I would say majority of the systems across the country, pension benefits are always pre-funded, because again, you want this investment return. So with USPS pensions, with the pension side, that's different from the healthcare side. The pension side was always pre-funded. It was always run on the pre-funded system, and there were never conversation about that. And that's how it works across the country, right? All pension systems work like this. And USPS is 87% funded. That's fine. With the healthcare side, though, the one that's underfunded and the one that's the whole conversation is about, well, why is it pre-funded if no one else is? This is a little bit different here, because while this is true that none of the other there isn't really exactly a requirement with healthcare benefits. Well, mainly because the healthcare problem is a new problem. We were pre-funding pensions since 50, 60, 70 years ago. Healthcare is new. The healthcare costs have been rising, so we don't have the expertise. We don't really have the best practices really here. But so what happened with the USPS is in 2006 they realized that they were deeply in debt when it comes to retiree healthcare, and they decided to put it into pre-funding system. And it was 2006 USPS Financial Responsibility Act, if I'm remembering it correctly.
I
And
think
so,
so. I think
yeah.
so.
So, and then they decided to put it on the solvency track. However, what happened with USPS is that their volumes declined, so they weren't getting as much revenue as they were expecting. And then so at the end, there was just not enough money for them to pre-fund those benefits. And and since 2013, they haven't put any money into the healthcare side to pre-fund the benefits. So although we were calling the system pre-funded, de facto, it wasn't really, they weren't paying anything since 2013.
Right.
And then,
Nothing really went
yeah,
according to plan, right?
well, yeah, it did. It really didn't. For a few years there, it did, but then it didn't. And so this new USPS Fairness Act that wants to repeal this pre-funding requirement, it's removing this 2006 act that was going to put the USPS back on solvency track. And now we're getting rid of that, although we even have more money than we had back then in debt. We have less, so we have less money. We have more debt than we used to have in 2006, but we're getting rid of this requirement that was intended to fix it in the first place. And so I guess the conversation is what portion of the benefits should be pre-funded, and maybe that's the conversation we should be having. But removing this requirement that builds out more than 60% of pension benefits,
Right.
based on our experience, it's the most expensive way, the most wasteful way to run any sort of benefit.
Right. And clearly something major in terms of reform has fallen by the wayside. And I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, according to the Government Accountability Office, there's more than $140 billion in USPS unfunded retirement obligations. So the question is, what do you do about this? And more specifically, we've been seeing over the past decade or two, municipalities in some states have considered buying out pension obligations for a small sum up front. You could give people cash, a discounted sum of cash in the here and now, and in exchange they forego future retirement benefits. Do you see, in your expert opinion, do you see a scheme like that as working at all to solve some of these USPS problems?
This is a very interesting question. I do hear about these practices here and there. They're mostly like proposals. I haven't dealt with them in practice or anyone actually implementing that successfully. With USPS, you have to really look at the numbers, whether it make sense financially, because you have to project how many people they will have in the system and how many payouts are they going to have. And that can be done, I guess, technically, theoretically, because we do know the statistics, we know the mortality rates, we know a lot of inputs, and we can predict other inputs, how the markets are going to react, and what kind of investment returns people might get on whatever money they're going to get as a payout. You really have to look into this. I would think, though, when it comes to kind of building the assets, when it comes to, and I really don't think that a lot of you can run the whole system like that, because if everybody is asking for the money right here, right now, at one point, then you definitely don't have enough, because you don't even have enough for the future. Obviously, you don't have it right now. What I think would be, there isn't actually a completely different bill that's also happening and has also been introduced in the House, and that was the USPS, the Postal Service Financial Improvement Act of 2019, and that kind of offers USPS to put some of their funds, some of their assets for the healthcare portion into the index funds. which is a way of diversifying what they have, their portfolio. Right now, their portfolio is incredibly conservative. It's all treasury securities, and we don't see it in other pension systems. Most pension systems have about 60% very safe assets like treasury securities and bonds, and then other 40% in some sort of diversified portfolio that can have a combination of, some risk like real estate and some risky other investments, riskier, I would say. And it kind of balances it out. With USPS, we see it only one type of asset. And I think that's why a system that was fully funded, the pension side was fully funded back in 2011, one side of it, and 2013, the other side of it. They have two portions of it. They were fully funded, and now only like 5, 6, 7 years later now, they only 87% funded, and they just they're expecting more than they can realistically get. So I think the strategy here, this paying off the pension liabilities, like doing one-off payment, is not a sustainable way. I don't see it being a sustainable way of running your pension benefits for a big pension system like that, because it has to be a choice of people the way they want to do it, I guess.
Sure.
But so they have to opt into that in some sort of way, I would believe. And if you're thinking of a whole system, you have to think of how can you invest, what can you invest into that you can get a return that's maybe bigger than what you're expecting now. It's only 2.7%. Maybe you can diversify your portfolio, and then that way you build this, this chunk of money that I was talking about, 60 or so percent, that you can then use. I think that's where their heads should be at. That's what we should be thinking about. How to wisely use our money now, so we can put them into work, we can put our assets into work and take advantage of that later.
Right. And maybe that's where the conversation needs to be headed. But for these sorts of ideas, right now, postal leadership says, Jen and Ross, they're pretty smart postal people. Maybe they have a point. Maybe we should listen to their ideas more. A rumor has it that you have a new YouTube channel dedicated to discussing these sorts of ideas. Where can we find this YouTube channel?
Right, my YouTube channel is called Think Tanker, and I do videos about my opinion editorials, about some of my work about my work as a policy analyst. You can find it on YouTube. Just type in Jen Sidorova, Think Tanker, it should come up. And yeah, I hope to be making more of those in the future, and probably more conversations about USPS and pensions and all sorts of fun things finance.
Sounds good. And on our side, to find more content, please visit our website at protectingtaxpayers.org. Well, thank you, Jen. And hopefully postal leadership listens to us for a change.
Thank you, Ross.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you. All right.